Thank you, Isabel, and good morning. So we can pass immediately to the next slides. The next. So I'm here representing the European Research Executive Agency, and we are responsible for the selection and monitoring of the mission soil portfolio projects. We also support the mission secretariat in different other things. We collaborate with the JRC to ensure that the results of the projects will fit into the USO. But the main role today is on our perspective as being present in so many of the evaluations and being responsible for the evaluation. So in the next slide, I give the real title for my presentation on tips and tricks for a successful proposal. So just a very brief slide here on to really make sure that we all come from the same perspective. When we look at a topic, the topic is coming out of a series of EU policy priorities, key strategic orientations, and impact areas that have been defined. In this case, we are, of course, within the mission soil. This is the real goal of the Commission, to have this mission impact fulfilled. When the colleagues are writing the topics, they think about for each topic of the expected outcomes that they want that the projects that are funded under this topic contribute to. And when we go into your specific projects, what we are talking is, or what we expect is the results that will come out from your work, and how these results will then feed into the expected outcomes of the topic and the expected impacts of the mission. Next slide, please. In terms of key principles, and you will see, I will try to repeat myself several times, but to communicate clearly the same messages. Applying for a living lab topic, any of the two topics that are open, the one on carbon farming or the one that is more bottom up, is the same as applying to almost any other topic. So of course you have to be relevant. You need to understand well the topic, the political context, and the priorities that Paola just explained. You need to be simple and convincing when writing your proposal. Think and write with evaluators in mind. These are people like you, that they will come from the research, from the governance levels, from farming. We have usually multidisciplinary panels and multi-actor panels, and you need to make sure that for all of them, independently of their expertise, independently of the background, what you want to do is clearly explained, straightforward, and is based on facts and figures and references that are clear from your field. And then you need also to make sure, of course, that you are complete and that you take in account all the eligibility conditions. Of course, here we talk about the number of minimum number of partners, but also about this very important condition for the living lab topics of the multi-actor approach, as the co-creation, as Paola explained, is at the basis of the proposals. Next slide. So again, key principles, and now thinking a little bit with the living labs more in mind with these two topics, and particularly first maybe with the bottom-up topic. Being a bottom-up topic, it's the consortium decision on which soil health challenge or challenges they are focusing, which objectives of the missions are going to be tackled, and where are you going to situate the living labs. Of course, you have to comply with this rule of at least 3 different member states. Living labs have to be situated, but then you have to really, the rationale for all the rest is your decision. It means also that it's your responsibility to explain why this makes sense. Why is this your focus and not that? Why is this an important focus? When we go to the methodology, already Paola spoke about the interdisciplinarity, the transdisciplinarity, all this co-creation, co-development, and co-implementation of activities with the local actors. And this again needs to be clear. It's not just bringing the local actors after, is making sure that they were there since the beginning, since you defined the rationale of what were the needs. Why is this aspect that you chose to focus on in these sites important also for the local actors, and how how are they going to be engaged throughout the entire process? Then, of course, you need to show that your project will contribute to the outcomes of the topic and at least one of the mission impacts. And you need to support yourself on the dissemination and exploitation measures that will allow to bring your results closer to those that can use them within the project, but also outside of the project. And then in terms of the work plan, okay, here we talk about the quality of your work plan, how you are going to use your resources, and how is your team the best one to deliver on the idea that you propose. Next slide. We went a little bit back. Yeah, thank you. So as I mentioned here, I'm from the perspective of what happens during the evaluation, how we will select some proposals over others. So of course, when you are writing your proposals, and you know already the proposal template is organized in terms of different sections which correspond with the evaluation criteria. And it's important that you keep in mind the proposal template, the terminology that is therein, and the explanations that are given, because all these different elements that compose the proposal template, they translate into the evaluation criteria. So we are going to assess the objectives, how ambitious the proposal is, how it goes beyond the state of the art, the methodology, the concepts, the interdisciplinarity, the open science practices. We look at the outcomes and the impacts and how you contribute to them. And here I will refer it again, but the likely scale and significance of the contributions, your contributions, how your project will contribute to these aspects is really key. And then, of course, what are the measures that you are going to implement to support the reaching of these outcomes and impacts? Again, work plan, we talk about the quality and effectiveness of the risks, of the effort that you put into the different work packages and of the resources overall, and of course of the capacity of the consortium, of the different participants to deliver on the objectives that you propose. Next slide. So going a little bit more into the different aspects, when we talk about excellence, the pertinence and clarity of the objectives, how they are measurable, how we can verify that they have been accomplished, how realistically achievable they are. When we talk about the ambition and the state, moving the state of the art, the approaches that you are proposing, the concept solutions, how novel and innovative they are. On your rationale, again, clear and sound, building on existing knowledge, initiatives, how the different approaches are put together to deliver on the objectives. And here we are really talking about interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity, and not just about multidisciplinarity and just having different disciplines there, but really on how they are integrated, how you consider the open science practice, how you involve the stakeholder knowledge and end users in the co-design and co-creation of the project throughout the entire lifetime since day zero. And then other aspects like the gender dimension and how it is integrated in your research objectives. Next slide. In terms of impact, this is a slide that I think I use in almost all my presentations, but it's really to explain the logic that is behind the impact. When we define the needs at the topic level, to which you reply with certain objectives, with certain project activities, with certain results, the overall aim is always to contribute to the expected outcomes of that are defined in the topic and the impacts of the mission. So it is important that you think about all this sequence, and that this sequence influences the way your project is built, because there is really a linear sequence. And you have to build into some extent the project from both sides, so that the results are contributing to the expected outcomes and your objectives are answering to the needs that are identified in the topic. Next slide. In terms of your results, why are they so important and how varied they can be? They can be results from different types, from databases to reports to educational materials to business models. It's up to you to define what are the results that you are going to deliver, to whom, to which type of actors they are relevant, and to show that you have this contribution to the outcomes and the impacts, to really think about how you are going to use your results to reach these target audiences. Next slide. So your results should contribute to this impact at EU level and society, economic growth, job creation, progressing in a scientific field. But it is really up to you to define the logical steps from your results to the outcomes and the impacts, and to make them credible, because of course you can say that your results will contribute to reach the moon. Probably this will not be credible, but how it's to you to justify, to define and justify how this will happen. And again, here the justification, the scale and significance of each project contribution is really key. You should estimate and try to quantify when possible, including indicators, but you need to show how this quantification is based on baselines, benchmarks, and assumptions, so that we can clearly understand you expect to deliver this result, you expect that this result is going to contribute in this way, but you have to explain in what way and on what basis are your estimations done. Of course, very important also to understand what are the potential barriers and to explain how you have considered them on your work. There are things that go beyond what you can control. Even if your project is successful, there are things that might change. Be aware of what can be these barriers. Be aware of potential solutions that you can implement to overcome them. And again, going back to the target groups, who are the ones that can benefit from your results? How, and make sure that you really think about them when you are defining your dissemination exploitation measures, which are, I think, part of the next slide. And that, of course, need to be proportionate to the project, need to be concrete and tailored to those target actors that you want to reach with your results. So it's really good that you identify them, that you know which results you want to bring to each one of them, and that you identify relevant channels to communicate with them. And that you also think about how can you make sure that your results can be used by them in the most effective way. And if they are policymakers, how you are going to feed them the policy relevant results. And then overall, how you can help also with communication measures to make sure that your results and your project are better known from the beginning of the project. Next slide. In terms of implementation, so we already talked about the work plan, how it needs to be of good quality and effective, how you can quantify information so that monitor can be assessed by outside. So which deliverables are you going to do? How milestones are you going to plan to make sure that you are progressing? How the logic structure from a task to another task to the next work package is organized and makes sense. In terms of the resources, also that you have enough resources in each task, in each work package to deliver on their objectives and on deliverables that you planned. That here, going into more detail into the risks, that you really are aware of what can go well or less well in your work, and that you think about proper mitigation measures to address these risks. And this is a key aspect also for many proposals and during the evaluation, because you being well aware of your risks and recognizing them demonstrates that you are well aware of what you want to do. If you identify poor or poorly the risks, there are concerns that maybe you do not know what exactly are you expected to do under each task. Then, of course, when we talk about the consortium, they have to match what you want to do. They have to bring together the necessary disciplinary and interdisciplinary knowledge, and they need to have infrastructure to carry out the project activities as well as complement one another. There's no point of having 10 similar project partners and then missing a huge part of the expertise that you need to deliver the project. So everyone that is there should have a valid road, adequate resources to fulfill that role. Next slide. In terms of legal entities, so here again, as for the other Horizon Europe proposals, there's no difference. Any legal entity on member states, overseas countries and territories, countries associated to Horizon Europe, low and middle income countries, and international European research organizations can participate and receive funding. Other entities can only participate. And in terms of partnerships, there can be beneficiaries, associated partners, or affiliated entities. And next slide. Particularly for this topic, you can also use financial support to third parties. And I will just lose a few minutes on this financial support. This is not a novelty in Horizon Europe, but it is a type of support that is less known and that we have received a few questions regarding the Living Lab topics and how it can be used. So first of thing, this is an option for a consortium, is not a mandatory option. So it means that you might decide that you do not want to use financial support to third parties, or that you do want, and in that case, it's a way of beneficiaries to award cascade funding to third parties. It allows that key activities of the project can be implemented by certain smaller actors that would not maybe make sense to have as full beneficiaries in the grant. And in the case of the Living Lab topics, it can be given in the form of grants or with or without a call for proposals. There are a series of rules that are related with this the financial support to third parties regarding the costs and how it can be implemented, and these are described in the annotated grant agreement. And there is no decision also a priori if it's one beneficiary or several beneficiaries that can award the financial support to third party. Again, these are decisions of the consortium in case they want to use this instrument, but they need to be, the understanding is that the beneficiary that has the funding support is responsible for the proper use of the financial support by the recipients that do receive it. Next slide. What does it mean for the proposal? So in part A, you need to fill in the relevant column and indicate which partner or partners would be giving financial support. And in the part B, you need to include the annex where you should describe what are the objectives and expected results for this specific part, for this specific support, what are the activities, what type of persons can benefit, how much would this person, natural or legal categories of persons receive, how the data will be publicly available, and comply with a series of conditions on transparency, equal treatment, conflict of interest, and confidentiality, which are required for any recipient of financial support to third parties. So this means that you need to think about how you are going to distribute this funding, even if there is no call for proposals, even if it's your decision of how this would be distributed, you need to justify it, how you would do it. And we have also published 2 frequently asked questions on this aspect that are included in the topic. If you go to the Funding and Tenders portal, you can see them there and provide further clarifications in case you want to include financial support to third parties in your proposals. Next slide. So just some final considerations, and again, repeating myself, under excellence, really define well the key objectives, be ambitious but realistic, provide sufficient detail on your approach and methodology, create links with previous networks, projects. Again, Paula has already defined some that are included in the topic text, but really explain how this would be achieved. Don't forget about these more horizontal aspects on open science, gender dimension. When we go to impact, consider all expected outcomes and relevant mission impacts, define well your key results, quantify and measure your contributions, the scale, the significance, the benchmarks, and consider seriously the existing barriers. When we go to implementation, think about the precise planning. What are you doing? When? Justify the resources distribution overall and among partners, and demonstrate how your consortium is complementary and can deliver on the objectives. And the next slide is just, I think, further information of webinars that have been organized, again, for Horizon Europe, but that they are relevant for any topic of Horizon Europe and where you can find further information. So happy to also answer further questions that you might have on the proposal and on the application process. Thank you very much.